Getting back a little bit to the goal setting, I think why it's really important to have, okay, there's the goal and then there's the timeline, and those both have to be specific. And then there's sort of the strategy. And I sort of have all my goal stuff a little bit more fluid. It's just generally been really big picture where I want to end up, and I should probably rein it in a little bit. But one of the things I found really interesting, because I've been looking at revisiting some of, my daily habits and my goals and all that currently, and usually my first thing when I'm interested in something, I go and I just read a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
Read like, okay, what are people doing? Because no matter what your great plan is, someone else has done it before, thought about it in terms of shortcutting some solutions. I'm like, okay, why do people act the way they do? And then how can you change that? And so I've been looking a lot at habits and how habits relate to goals. And I found it really interesting that the goal shouldn't necessarily be the thing. Like, you should have this idea of the thing, but the goal should really become the person who achieves, like the type of person who achieves that goal.
I like that, yeah.
That's the thing that I keep coming back to is really interesting. It's one thing to say, I want to make $1 million by 25.
Yep.
If you have no idea, then the first thing you need to do is, I want to become the type of person who makes $1 million by 25.
Yes.
And that key difference there sets it in motion of sort of, it's the catalyst of the idea versus the motion towards the activity, the becoming.
Yep.
And more often than not, not to sound cliche, it's like, well, if you fall short of the goal, you're still becoming the type of person who sets goals and aims towards achieving them.
Yes.
And I think that's such an important differentiation, and it's so powerful to be like, okay, I want to become the type of person who does these things. And when that sort of relates to building better habits, because I've been, again, trying to look at some things and building better habits, one challenge I realized about myself, and I probably said it on here because I say it all the time, I'm like a go big or go home type guy.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm in something, I'm all the way in. The problem with that mindset is, if I'm out of something, I tend to be all the way out. And if you build it up to like, okay, I'm gonna turn this corner, I'm gonna become this type of person, I'm gonna go 150%, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes you will build it up to be such a gigantic thing that you delay the starting. Big time. I used to be that way. I'm like, okay, if even with some people say, all right, I'm going to go back to the gym, I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to go 7 days a week, hour and a half, and maybe extra cardio at night, and they build it up to be this huge thing, and then what do? They never start.
Yeah.
And so one of the things
daunting.
Yeah, you build it up to be so big, and you can imagine people pining away and being like, oh my God, like, I just need my idea. It's like, no, start first with becoming the type of person who comes up with these ideas, which is putting yourself in certain scenarios, surrounding yourself with certain people, educating yourself in these things.
Yeah.
Become the type of person who reaches these goals, and then the goals will take care of themselves.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I that's a really smart thing. I am like 100% on board with that. I never even realized that, I think, in myself, but I think that's part of what had to be done. Like, I think in reading all that stuff and doing those different things, I think that's part of becoming that person.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I was trying to say, but you obviously said it much better. But I think it's subscribing to your goals, subscribing to the lifestyle, and making the transition. And also, like you said, don't overshoot. I'm all about overshooting, but don't overshoot necessarily in a short term, and don't try and make the transition overnight. Like you just said, I know so many people that's the gym one is such a common one. Like, all right, I'm on a diet, I'm never eating tasty food again. And I'm like, you're going to do that for 2 weeks and hate yourself. Like,
totally.
If you're eating tasty food 3 days a week right now, then let's scroll that back to 2. And then do that for a while, get very comfortable with that, and then scroll back to it. It's just like, if you go to the gym, you can't just expect to be like, all right, I'm going to bench 400 plates and lift the whole house.
Yeah, you're going to lose.
On the first day. You're going to work up to that.
Yeah. And I think, again, my challenge is as someone who is like, no, I got to turn the switch. Is that you make it to be this big thing instead of putting in the little bits of process, of which, I certainly tell other people to do that. And I talked about this once with my son in skateboarding, where I was running this micro experiment on him. Like, what if you did something a little bit every day? How much better you can get. And so, as I mentioned, one of the things,
listen to this and come back and be like,
no, like, he can really friggin' skateboard, man. The kid can shred. One of the things, like a book that I just finished reading over the holidays, and I had never heard of it before. I just kind of came across it, and since then everyone's been like, oh yeah, that's a great book. And it's called Atomic Habits, I think by James Clear.
Okay.
It's certainly worth a read if anyone's listening to this. Check it out. It's called Atomic Habits. I'm not, I don't get any money for.
I'll say, James, if you do want to kick us back $10.
But one of the interesting things, it's changed how I've looked at some of these things, that incremental progress kind of has a compounding effect, which is what we all know, and it's what we tell other people. But it was important to me because I am such a binary thinker that, I sometimes am hard on myself if I don't do a full pivot. Even when we've talked about what changes I want to make in my work balances, not between work and personal, but between different streams of income. Yeah. And I'm thinking, I got to cut it back. I got to hack 1 to 50% so I can go over here. So maybe that's not the truth. Maybe there is a gradual process. But a couple of the interesting anecdotes. This is the first one. If I gave you $1, would you say that you're rich?
No.
No. If I gave you another $1, no. If I gave you another $1 and another $1 and another $1 and another $1, continually by giving you a bunch of dollars over time, at some point, you would be rich.
Yes.
So the $1 doesn't make someone rich, but then at a certain point, $1 does make someone rich. Right? There is that tipping point. It's the same thing with 1% improvements on things. Do you understand what I'm saying?
100%.
Yeah. So you may think I'm only making a 1% improvement each time, but at a certain point, that adds up to be a lot. And I found that a really interesting little analogy of like $1 doesn't make you rich, but at some point $1 does make you rich. Yeah. And then I saw something else. I can't remember where I saw this. This interesting thing about some cold-blooded animals, but a frog, if you put a frog in a cold pot of water and slowly turned it up, they will boil to death and they will never notice a difference in temperature. Right? And this is like this small incremental change thing. I'm getting kind of abstract here a little bit, but these are these interesting things about incremental changes for someone like myself who always thought it had to be make or break. It had to be, all or nothing, go big or go home, that these small little changes become, as he words it, and then this, I'm paraphrasing this author, that every decision or every action you make is a vote for the type of person you want to become.
Yeah. Which
I think that really resonated for me on we are a sum of these micro decisions and these micro improvements that we can make. And when you look at that about daily habits and goal settings, everything that you accomplish or everything you decide to do or not do is a vote for the type of person you want to become. So think of young Neal taking these little steps. You were effectively voting for yourself to be today's version of you, if you look at it back. So I just found that super, super interesting.
Yeah, no, same. I'm like, if I put my hand in a pot of water and then I slowly turn it, I'm going to try this tonight.
It's for a frog. It's a frog that happened. Did you miss the part of where I said it's a frog and cold-blooded animals? Yeah, don't do it to yourself. You'll notice it.
Okay.
But a frog would just boil to death in there without noticing the change. So this is also like that's the negative consequence of not doing something, not starting.
The same process happens on the reverse.
Yeah, man.
100%. If you continuously make those decisions that aren't necessarily beneficial for you, eventually they start to compound. And I think actually I can agree. I've done that as well. Like sometimes I'm like, whatever, what's another day or what's another this? And then it starts to reverse, have that impact. But I think what you're saying is 100% true. I think it's getting the feeling of reward along the way that makes it really tough. Because in those first 1% days and those first $1 days, you're like, man, I did what I was supposed to do. I made the right decision. I've been doing this now for 2 months or 3 months, but I still am not rich or I'm still not shredded out of my mind. Yeah. And you don't feel, that's where I find a lot, that's the big hurdle. I find that there's it's hard to get past.
You need a reward mechanism of some type for sure.
You have to find a reward mechanism of some type. Like actually, I'll say mine for working out. This was a big one that helped me because I used to be fine about when I was a little bit younger. I had the time and the energy to kind of go. And as times have gone on, I'm starting to lose that excitement for it. But now my reward mechanism, as lame as it sounds, I switched my protein powder. I used to drink plain protein powder, which is a little psychotic to begin with. But I switched to chocolate flavor. And
treat yourself.
Exactly. So now when I'm like, I want something chocolatey and sweet, I go to the gym and it's already in my head. Like when I'm at the gym, I'm just pumping out and I'm like, okay, I got these 6 exercises left. If I can slam these out, I'm going to get home and I get to have my chocolate protein.
I got myself a little chocolate.
I got myself a little chocolate. So that's all I'm waiting for. The whole time I'm at the gym, that's all I'm thinking about. Like I don't care about anything. I just want my banana chocolate protein.
And here's the funny thing. You want to know what you're doing there is like reward associating habits. Yeah. Right? Like everyone knows like we'll have these examples. When I do this, I do that afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, and so some people, if you're heading down one track, it's like when I sit down and watch TV, I get my chips. And so you've trained your brain to these things,
Yep.
whether you know it or not. It's like, what's it, Pavlov's dog or whatever, the one that hears a voice and then starts to salivate. Yeah. Like this is what you train your brain to do. So what you're doing is retraining your brain to associate a finished workout that may have had negative associations to a positive association. As silly as that little, reward is, it does matter. And the other thing I think is just reminding yourself in those moments where you don't have a tangible success because you set this goal of like, no, but everything I've done here has been a vote for me to become the person that I want to be. Right?
When I was broke, I had rich habits.